Alright, so picture this. It's 1998 and you're 23. You just graduated from college and your parents take you on a Caribbean cruise to celebrate. Sounds good, right? But by day 2, you vanish off the ship without a trace. Now, I'm going to admit I'm a little bit behind, probably a lot of you. I've just finished watching the Netflix documentary of the case of Amy Bradley, who went missing off a cruise ship. If you haven't checked out the Netflix documentary, I highly recommend it. Go and check it out. But the documentary itself left a few unanswered questions, and I want to talk about 10 of them today in the video. So first things first, let's start off with a little bit of a recap for those who haven't seen the documentary or maybe have watched it a while ago, and just a little bit of a recap of what happened. So Amy Lynn Bradley was last seen on board Rhapsody of Seas in March 24th, 1998. She'd been out late with her brother Brad, dancing on the ship's nightclub. She was last seen sleeping on the balcony of the family suite around 5:30 a.m. and by 6 a.m. she was gone. No sign of a struggle, no body, no trace, just vanished. So cruise officials first of all said Amy probably fell overboard. Now Amy was a strong swimmer, a lifeguard, and she hated the ocean. So her parents never believed that. But since then, dozens of reported sightings, photos, a brothel, a Navy officer, and theories ranging from suicide to human trafficking to murder. And somehow 27 years later, nothing concrete. So here are 10 things that Netflix left out from the documentary. Let me know in the comments if there's any I've missed and any you feel are very pivotal for this case. So starting at number 1, we're going to talk about the Frank Jones scam. Now this is absolutely wild and Netflix barely touched on it. So in 2002, a man named Frank Jones claimed he was a former Special Forces officer. He told Amy's parents he had a team in the Caribbean and had found Amy alive. He described her tattoos, said she was terrified, and claimed he even heard her voice. All he needed was money, a lot of it. So the Bradleys desperately wired him $200,000 to fund a rescue operation. But the whole thing turned out to be a scam. Jones never found Amy, never had a team. He was arrested, charged with mail fraud, and served 5 years in prison. Netflix did not include this massive emotional and financial betrayal in the documentary, and frankly it's crucial because it shows how vulnerable families of missing people are and how the case has attracted comment as well as cops. Something else that was missed out from the documentary, or wasn't really covered that much, was around the cabin being cleaned before the FBI arrived. So Amy disappears, the FBI is called, but by the time they board the ship, the cabin, her cabin, had already been cleaned by the cruise staff. Let that sink in a second. The last place she was seen, potential evidence, fingerprints, DNA, gone. That's a crime scene. And they cleaned it before law enforcement had even entered the ship and even had the chance to investigate. Netflix does mention it. They mention that there was delays in the FBI involvement, but they didn't explain the full scope of what was lost. This wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was negligence, maybe worse. Another thing as well, in the documentary, we hear from Brad, who is Amy's brother, and from a ship's bass player, Yellow. But there was also a third witness who barely gets a footnote. A female passenger reported seeing Amy and Yellow walking up a stairwell together around 5:15 a.m. after the club had closed. This would make Yellow the last person to see Amy alive, but his story changed. First he said he danced with her, then he said he didn't know her. Why didn't Netflix dig into this more? Why didn't law enforcement? The third witness could have helped narrow down the timeline. She saw something important and was almost completely ignored. Number 4, we're going to talk about missing photographs. Photos were taken of every guest on the cruise for souvenirs. Standard practice. But when Amy disappeared, her parents went to the ship's photo gallery and guess what? All of Amy's photos, just hers, were missing from the wall. Tampered with, removed. Someone had pulled every single image of her down. Coincidence, or someone trying to cover the tracks? Netflix again mentioned the photos briefly but didn't explore this deeply. Yet it could be one of the clearest signs that someone on board knew exactly what had happened and was trying to cover things up. Some of the sightings as well weren't taken very seriously. Over the years there has been dozens of Amy sightings, but two stand out, and these two weren't fully explored on Netflix. First, a US Navy sailor claimed he had visited a brothel in 1999. A woman approached him, said her name was Amy Bradley and begged for help. But he didn't report it until years later, out of fear he'd get into trouble. And second, a Canadian tourist said he saw a woman with Amy's exact tattoos on a beach being followed closely by two men. She swore it was her. Neither of these were treated with the seriousness they deserved. And again, Netflix did touch on these briefly, but didn't examine how these women might have been trafficked, watched, silenced, and that leads us on to number 6, the trafficking theory. Let's talk human trafficking. Netflix again mentions the theory, but sort of dances around it a little bit. But experts believe Amy fits the exact profile: young, attractive, outgoing, athletic. And where the ship docked when she vanished is known as a hub for trafficking in the Caribbean. And these sightings, the brothel, the beach, even the photos emailed anonymously to the families years later, they all point toward trafficking. One image also showed a woman named Jazz. Same tattoos, same face shape, posing in lingerie. Amy's parents were convinced it was her. The FBI, inconclusive. But again, Netflix just glossed over this. It's one of the most credible theories in the case, and they didn't seem to take the time to cover it in much detail. Another thing as well, according to her family, Amy was uncomfortable on board, uncomfortable almost the entire trip. She said that crew members were too friendly. In fact, one even tried to get her alone. Amy had no interest in being near the railing. She didn't like open water, as mentioned earlier. She wasn't drinking heavily that night. Yet Netflix portrays the cruise as a fun party, then oops, she vanished. But Amy was on the edge. That detail matters, because if someone targeted her, she may have felt it coming. Let's talk about another theory, the balcony door theory. Okay, so James Renner, an investigative journalist, brought up the fascinating point. Cabin doors on ships can slam, shut due to air pressure, if both the cabin and balcony doors are open. Why does this matter? Now, it matters because the timeline is so tight. Her dad last saw her at 5:30 a.m. on the balcony. By 6 a.m, gone. Could she have left voluntarily, gone to maybe meet someone and close the door quietly? Or was she taken from that balcony? Did someone climb up maybe from below? Or maybe jump over from the adjacent room? The mechanics of the space were never tested, and Netflix didn't touch on this. Netflix also painted Amy as a classic all-American girl, but she'd just come out as gay before the cruise. She was wrestling with her identity and, according to her family, was under stress. Now, that doesn't change how vulnerable her life was, but it does add depth into who she was. And in Renner's more controversial theory, he suggests Amy might have had suicidal thoughts. Her family strongly disagree. But once again, Netflix barely addresses part of her life. You can't tell a full story without telling the whole person. And the last one, and it's quite a big one, Royal Caribbean's legal team allegedly tried to settle with the Bradleys very early on in exchange for silence. They didn't allow full access to the crew, didn't preserve evidence, didn't take responsibility. The family believes the cruise line prioritised the brand over the truth. Netflix again mentioned this, but very softly, but this is very, very key. Because if someone on board did something to Amy and they covered it up, that's not just a tragedy, it's a corporation cover-up. So there we have it, 10 things that Netflix did not tell you about the Amy Lynn Bradley disappearance. I'll encourage you all to go and watch the documentary on Netflix and come back in the comments and let me know your theories around this. Do you think it was purely an accident? Did Amy fall overboard, or is there more to it? This case is more than just a missing person. It's a string of failures, of ignored warnings, of lives ruined by silence, by lies, and by lost time. Do I personally think Amy was taken? Personally, yes, I do. In fact, I think she is one of the most credible human trafficking victims we have seen. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Go and watch the documentary and come and let me know. And as always, stay curious and stay safe, and I'll see you very soon.